43. Beware of those who deliberately use aspects of the truth to deceive you and others. When someone tells you something that is true, but intentionally leaves out important information that should be included for full comprehension on your part to take place, they can create a false impression. For example, an acquaintance might tell you, "I just won $100 in the state lottery, and it was fantastic when I took that $1 ticket back to the store and turned it in for $100. This woman's a winner, right? Maybe, maybe not. In fact, you later learn that she had purchased not one ticket, but instead 200 for this specific lottery, and only one of these a winner. Eventually, you realize this woman, who you thought was lucky or fortunate, is, in fact, a huge loser. Although she didn't say anything false, she clearly left out important information and likely did so on purpose. That's called a half-truth, which is not technically a lie, but it's just as dishonest. 44. Untrustworthy candidates in political campaigns often use such deceptive communication strategies to trick voters into supporting them. Let's say that during Governor Smith's last term, her state lost 1 million jobs but gained 3 million new ones. Then she seeks another term in office and enters the election race. One of her opponents in that race subsequently begins a multimedia advertising campaign saying, "During Governor Smith's term, the state lost 1 million jobs." That is indeed true, but at the same time, it is intentionally deceptive. A more honest statement from her opponent would have been, "During Governor Smith's term, the state had a net gain of 2 million jobs." Advertisers sometimes use half-truths as well. Because it's illegal in many countries to openly make false claims about a product or service, some advertisers try to mislead you with the truth. An ad might consequently boast, 9 out of 10 doctors recommend yucky pills to cure nose pimples. This is also a factual statement, but one which deliberately fails to mention that only 10 doctors were asked about yucky pills, and 9 of these actually work for the Yucky Corporation. 45.
Have you ever noticed the different approaches people use to deal with problems? Some people, individualists, generally try to work through problems on their own. Other people, cooperators, tend to approach problem solving as a group matter. Each approach has positive and negative points. Individualists may often be the quickest to find an answer to a problem, and they tend to be willing to take responsibility. However, this approach is not perfect. They may be too committed to a particular position to be able to change their opinions. In this way, the individualist approach may result in difficulties later. Cooperators are valued as team members, in sports or school or work. They tend to be flexible enough to recognize the importance of other points of view when problems arise. This approach, however, can take a long time, which may lead to delays in solving problems. Such difficulties sometimes cannot be avoided with the cooperator's approach. We should learn to recognize the different approaches to dealing with problems. This knowledge can help us build smoother relations between people with different approaches to problem solving.
46.
In 1983, the Nobel Prize-winning economist Wassily Leontief highlighted the debate through a clever comparison of humans and horses. For many decades, horse labor appeared unaffected by technological change. Even as railroads replaced the stagecoach and the Conestoga wagon, the U.S. horse population grew seemingly without end. The animals were vital, not only on farms, but also in the country's rapidly growing urban centers. But then, with the introduction and spread of the powerful and efficient engine, the trend was rapidly reversed. As engines found their way into automobiles in the city and tractors in the countryside, horses became largely irrelevant. Then the question is whether a similar outcome is possible for human labor. Are autonomous machines and supercomputers indicating a coming wave of technological progress that will finally sweep humans out of the economy? For Leontiev, the answer was yes. However, he missed a number of important points. Humans, fortunately, are not horses and remain an important part of the economy.
47.
Alfred Marshall, a British economist, in his foundational 1890 book, Principles of Economics, said, "Human wants and desires are countless in number and very various in kind." Ever since Marshall, people have linked unlimited wants to full employment. After all, who else but workers will be able to fulfill all those wants and desires? We humans are a deeply social species, and the desire for human connections carries over to our economic lives. We come together to appreciate human expression or ability when we attend plays and sporting events. Regular customers often visit particular restaurants, not only because of the food and drink, but because of the hospitality offered. In these cases, human interaction is central to the economic transaction, not incidental to it. Humans have economic wants that can be satisfied only by other humans, and that makes us deny that we will go the way of the horse.
48.
You are on your way to a concert. At an intersection, you encounter a group of people all staring at the sky. Without even thinking about it, you look upwards too. Why? Social proof. In the middle of the concert, when the soloist is giving an excellent performance, someone begins to clap, and suddenly the whole room joins in. You do too. Why? Social proof. After the concert, you go to the coat check to pick up your coat. You watch how the people in front of you place a coin on a plate, even though, officially, the service is included in the ticket price. What do? You probably leave a coin as well. Why? Social proof. Social proof, sometimes roughly termed the herd instinct, dictates that individuals feel they are behaving correctly when they act the same as other people. In other words, if a large number of people follow a certain idea, others will find this idea truer or better. And the more people who display a certain behavior, the more appropriate others will judge it. This is, of course, ridiculous. Social proof is the evil behind economic bubbles and stock market panic. It exists in fashion, management techniques, hobbies, religion, and diets. In some cases, it can even negatively affect whole cultures.
49.
A simple experiment carried out in the 1950s by legendary psychologist Solomon Asch shows how common sense is influenced by peer pressure. The tendency to want to act the same as the members of one's social group. In Asch's experiment, a research participant is shown a line drawn on paper, and next to it 3 lines numbered 1, 2, and 3. One shorter, one longer, and one of the same length as the original one. The participant must indicate which of the 3 lines corresponds to the original one. If that participant is alone in the room, he gives correct answers. Unsurprising, because the task is really quite simple. Now 5 other people enter the room. They are all actors, a fact that the participant does not know. One after another, they give wrong answers, saying, number 1, although it's very clear that number 3 is the correct answer. Then it is the participant's turn again. In 1/3 of cases, he will answer incorrectly to match the other people's responses. Why do we act like this?
50.
In the past, following others was a good survival strategy. Suppose that 50,000 years ago, you were traveling in the wild with your hunter-gatherer friends, and suddenly they all fled at the sight of an animal. What would you have done? Would you have remained still, wondering about what you were looking at? Was it a lion, or something that just looked like a lion but was, in fact, a harmless animal? No, you would have followed your friends. Later on, when you were safe, you could have reflected on what the lion had actually been. Those who acted differently from the group did not pass their genes on to the later generations. We are directly descended from those who copied the other's behavior. This pattern is so deeply rooted in us that we still use it today, even when it offers no survival advantage, which is most of the time. Only a few cases come to mind where social proof is of value. For example, if you find yourself hungry in a foreign city and don't know a good restaurant, it makes sense to pick the one that's full of local people. In other words, you copy the local people's behavior. Comedy and talk shows make use of social proof by inserting sounds of people laughing at key moments, encouraging the audience to laugh along.
51.
No one knows better than your mother, right? But does she know how much underwear you own? Jockey International does. Or the number of ice cubes you put in a glass? Coca-Cola knows that we put 3.2 ice cubes in a glass and prefer cans to pop out of vending machines at a temperature of 2 degrees. Which potato chips do you usually eat first? The broken ones or the whole ones? Try asking a big snack maker. Big companies know the what, where, how, and when of their consumers' wants and demands. They figure out all sorts of things about us that we don't even know ourselves. Most companies research us in detail and collect mountains of facts about our buying habits and preferences. Did you know that 51% of all males pull their left pants leg on first, whereas 65% of women start with the right leg? Nothing about our behavior is sacred. A study showed that 68% of consumers prefer their toilet paper to unwind over the spool rather than under. But Americans are not always easy to figure out. A few years ago, Campbell's Soup gave up trying to learn our opinions about the ideal-sized meatball after a series of tests showed that we prefer one so big it wouldn't fit in the can.
52.
In fact, almost everything we swallow is closely monitored by someone. Each year, we consume 156 hamburgers, 95 hot dogs, 283 eggs, 5 pounds of yogurt, 9 pounds of cereal, and 2 pounds of peanut butter. We spend 90 minutes a day munching it. Of all businesses, however, the prize for research thoroughness may go to toothpaste makers. Among other things, they know that our favorite toothbrush color is blue, and that only 37% of us are using one that's more than 6 months old. About 47% of us put water on our brush before we apply the paste. 15% put water on after the paste, 24% do both, and 14% don't wet the brush at all. Thus, most big companies have answers to all the what, where, when, and how questions about their consumer demand. But to affect demand, companies need the answer to one more question. They need to know what causes us to want the things we buy. That's a much harder question to answer.
53.
A basic rule of medical science is that no human life should be used for the benefit of another. Some people are against human cloning and related techniques for this reason. In cloning, an egg cell is used to develop ordinary cells. The opponents of cloning insist that this is killing, because it destroys the potential of the egg to develop into a human being. Other people oppose cloning because at this stage it is unreliable. In animal experiments, for example, success rates are very low. Still others are concerned about the future that cloning might bring about. They are afraid that cloning will lead to the production of human beings for body parts. They also fear that cloning might lead to attempts to create superior humans.
54.
Not everyone is against human cloning, however. Some people support cloning if it is for the purpose of medical treatment, although they oppose the cloning of babies. The medical benefits of cloning and related techniques, they argue, could be huge. For example, if a heart can be developed from a patient's own cell, the body will not reject it. Furthermore, he or she will not have to wait for someone to die to get a new heart. Supporters claim that the use of such techniques is not killing. Just as ordinary store-bought eggs do not develop into chickens, the eggs used for cloning do not develop into human beings by themselves. They also argue that it is already practically impossible to stop a patient from receiving medical treatment that in some way depends on cloning and related techniques. Even if one country bans cloning, there will always be another country that promotes it. The supporters, therefore, maintain that scientists should have the freedom to experiment and that people should have the freedom to seek life-saving treatments. In other words, they feel that cloning should be continued unless it is clearly shown to be harmful. The debate over this issue is likely to go on for some time.
55.
Harvest Plus, an agricultural research organization, is teaching people around the world how to grow what it calls smart crops. Its project in Mozambique is having surprising effects. In 2006, Harvest Plus workers provided orange sweet potato plants to people in 24 villages in Mozambique. The workers taught these people how to grow the vegetables. They also explained the importance of vitamin A to staying healthy. Farmers in Mozambique had been planting white and yellow sweet potatoes, not the orange-colored ones. The white and yellow potatoes have very little vitamin A. However, one small orange sweet potato has a full day's supply of vitamin A. A lack of vitamin A is dangerous. Without enough vitamin A, you face an increased risk of getting a serious disease or dying from infections. The World Health Organization, WHO, reports that around the world 190 million young children are not getting enough of this important vitamin in the foods they eat. Economist Alan DeBraw is with the International Food Policy Research Institute and was involved with the project. He says about 70% of children there were vitamin A deficient. They were not getting enough vitamin A. About 70% of kids under the age of 5 were vitamin A deficient. So you have this huge need for new solutions. If you can do something through agriculture to increase the amount of vitamin in the diet, you're in much better shape because that's much more sustainable than using vitamin supplements.
56.
Anne Herforth, an expert on global food security and nutrition, calls supplements a short-term solution to a more fundamental problem, which is people not having access to high-quality diets. Mr. DeBraw says the potatoes had a surprising effect on the health of children. At the end of the 3-year study, the researchers compared the health of children in villages growing orange sweet potatoes with those not growing them. Children living in the sweet potato villages had 40% fewer cases of diarrhea than other boys and girls. Among children under the age of 3, the difference was 50%. According to Mr. DeBraw, showing the effect of a food-growing project on health is very important, or as he says, a big deal. This is a big deal because nobody has shown in the past that an agricultural production intervention can have big health impacts, any health impacts. Experts say that teaching farmers how to grow healthier food is one of the best ways to improve health. Ms. Herforth says the findings do a good job making the link between food production and health. It's important to show that if you produce a food and it's available to people to eat, and they like it, then it does good things for health. Harvest Plus is now helping farmers in other countries. In India, the group is helping farmers grow iron-rich millet. And in Bangladesh, it is helping farmers grow high-zinc rice.
57.
No more TV dinners. No more snacking with Paul McCartney on the kitchen stereo. And certainly no listening to the more intellectual bits of Radio 4 over breakfast. If you want to lose weight, the best accompaniment to a meal is the sound of your own chewing, a study suggests. Psychologists in the U.S. have found that people consume less food when they can hear themselves eating. They believe the effect to be so powerful that even simply telling somebody that they are eating a crunchy snack makes them eat less. In a considerable benefit to those who cannot get through a packet of crisps without making the noise of a small gunfight, experiments show that the more people concentrate on the noise of their meal, the less they eat, and they think the flavors are more intense. Gina Moore, assistant professor of marketing at Colorado State University, said the findings suggested that people who wanted to diet could cut down on distracting sounds. In one experiment, Dr. Moore and a colleague asked 71 students to sit in a room with a bowl of 10 pretzels while wearing a pair of headphones. Half of the participants had their ears flooded with white noise, drowning out the sound of their chewing. They ate an average of 4 pretzels each. The other half, who were able to hear themselves eat much more distinctly, took 2.8 each.
58.
The marketing psychologists also sat 156 undergraduates down in a room with 8 baked crackers made from pita bread. One group read a piece of paper that said, "Our pita crackers deliver the crunch you crave. You'll love the crispy sound of each bite." They each ate an average of 1 fewer than the other group, who were shown an instruction that emphasized the taste instead. The researchers believe that food manufacturers have long understood this phenomenon. When the company behind the Magnum brand of ice creams changed their chocolate coating to stop it slipping off the bar, they were inundated with complaints. It eventually emerged that people had largely been buying the bars precisely because they liked the brittleness of the chocolate and crackling noise it made when they ate it. To our knowledge, this relationship had not been examined in existing research, despite the importance that food sound has in the consumer environment, the authors wrote in the journal Food Quality and Preference.
59. When it comes to eating, the United States has a lesson to learn from France. I'm not talking about the kind of elaborate dinners Americans often associate with the French. Many of the meals the French eat are quick and simple. The difference is that the French eat together. They have managed to preserve a tradition that is good for everyone's health, the family meal. According to the French government's Committee for Health Education, 75% of the French eat dinner together as a family, and many French school children still go home for lunch. These figures haven't changed much in decades. In the United States, on the other hand, national studies show that on average, only one family in 3 sits down for dinner together on a daily basis. Over the last 2 decades, there has been a steady decline in the number of American families that eat together regularly. It looks like the family meal is disappearing. 60. How and why did the family meal start to disappear in the United States? My friends in the United States have various explanations why meals together aren't an option for their families. Parents and children lead hectic lives, and there just isn't time for a sit-down meal. Kids' sports schedules run on into dinner hour. After a long day at work, parents are too tired to cook. Teenagers are off on their own after school. Everyone likes different foods, they say. So what is the point of eating together? Yet, study after study shows that having meals together as a family is good for both adults and children. A University of Michigan study found that mealtime at home was the single strongest factor predicting better achievement scores and fewer behavioral problems for children. Mealtime was far more powerful than time spent in school, studying, worshiping, playing sports, or doing arts activities. Other studies show that children like family meals. In one report, nearly 4/5 of adolescents cited eating dinner at home as one of their top-rated family activities. In a national YMCA poll in 2000, when teenagers were asked about their worries, 21% rated not having enough time with parents as their top concern. 61.
A modern supermarket is a thing of wonder. Even if it's snowing outside and summer is a distant memory, you can buy strawberries, peaches, or grapes. If you want root vegetables in the middle of a heat wave, you can have them. Expat Americans can have their Oreo cookies, while homesick New Zealanders can console themselves with wine and kiwi fruit. Within days of being picked off the vines, the fruit is in your trolley, tasting of spring as the leaves are falling outside. It's all great until you start contemplating the vast mileage sitting in your shopping basket. Those kiwi fruits have traveled nearly 20,000 kilometers, or 12,000 miles. They've flown in a plane and traveled by road. By the time they reach the supermarket, they're responsible for 5 times their own weight in greenhouse gases being pumped into the atmosphere. Increasingly, our food is coming from further and further away, and we're becoming more and more dependent on the fuel it takes to get them to us.
62.
This dependence was illustrated very clearly during the September 2000 fuel price protests in Britain. Inspired by similar actions in France, a group of farmers and lorry drivers decided to blockade the Stanlow oil refinery in Cheshire. The protest quickly snowballed, and petrol tankers were unable to leave refineries. Panic buying saw more than 90% of petrol stations run dry. And with supplies unable to get through, supermarket shelves quickly emptied. It's estimated that food now accounts for as much as 40% of all UK road freight, and the international food trade is increasing faster than the world's population and food production. In other words, food is moving around more than ever, and the environmental impact could be huge. Despite the UK's cool climate being perfectly suited for growing apples, nearly 3/4 of the apples eaten in the UK are imported, and more than 60% of Britain's apple orchards have been destroyed in the past 30 years. We're now putting more energy into transporting some crops than we get out of eating them. For every calorie of lettuce imported to the UK from America's west coast, 127 calories of fuel are used. Put it another way, flying over a kilogram of Californian lettuce uses enough energy to keep a 100-watt light bulb glowing for 8 days.
63.
One of the most popular ways to demonstrate this year's severe U.S. winter appeared to be tossing out a glass of boiling water and watching it freeze instantly in mid-air. Of course, the reason the fun experiment impressed viewers is because nobody expects boiling water to turn to ice that quickly. It turns out that contrary to intuitive thinking, it actually freezes faster than cold water. Why? That's a mystery still waiting to be solved. While this phenomenon has been observed for thousands of years, it was brought to the world's attention in 1963 by Tanzanian high school student Erasto Mpemba. It all began when the young boy was learning to make ice cream in cooking class. After dissolving the sugar in boiling milk, the students were instructed to allow the mixture to cool down before putting it in the ice cream churner. Too impatient to wait, Mpemba put his mixture in while it was still hot. To his and everyone's surprise, his ice cream was the first to freeze. His explanation appeared so unbelievable that even his teacher thought Mpemba must be mistaken.
64.
Convinced that he had discovered something, Mpemba told a visiting physics professor about his accidental experiment. Like his teacher, the professor was a little doubtful, but invited him to test the theory. The two began by filling 100 milliliter beakers with 70 milliliter samples of water of varying temperatures and placing them in the icebox of a normal refrigerator. What they noticed was that it took longer for the water to freeze when the temperature was at 25 degrees Celsius than when it was at a much hotter 90 degrees Celsius. Since then, the phenomenon has been known as the Mpemba effect. However, while the two were able to demonstrate it, neither could find a scientific explanation for why it occurred. Over the years, researchers have come up with several theories. The theory that most believe is fairly straightforward. It is a known fact that hot water evaporates faster than cold. Hence, when boiling water is tossed into cold air, some of it turns into steam and disappears, leaving behind less to turn to ice. Sounds plausible, right? In fact, Mpemba had thought of this possibility and even tested it. Unfortunately,
he found no difference in the volumes of the ice formed at different temperatures.
65.
A more recent scientific study conducted by Zai Zhang at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore attributes the phenomenon to the chemistry between the hydrogen and oxygen molecules that make up water. The researcher believes that as the temperature rises, it provides the molecules with a lot of pent-up energy. When this water is tossed into a cold environment, the energy jumps out in a way similar to how a highly compressed spring would when released. This results in the hot water cooling down much more rapidly than cold water, which does not contain as much energy. While all these theories are plausible and explain the phenomenon under certain conditions, none seems to provide a satisfactory universal solution to this strange physical property that has confused scientists since Aristotle observed it in 380 BCE.
66.
Even with the hard work and caring of many dedicated teachers and concerned parents, the U.S. continues to have a reading problem. According to the National Center for Educational Information, 38% of fourth-grade students cannot read and understand a short paragraph of the type found in a simple children's book. Results from a 1998 study showed that 60% of U.S. teenagers could comprehend specific facts, but fewer than 5% could elaborate on the meanings of the material read. No wonder many parents are discouraged, but they needn't be. By doing simple things like reading to their child, sharing their thinking about what they read, and telling their child stories, they can help develop the foundation needed for children to become good readers and learn that reading is not a chore, but a lifetime adventure.
67.
Good readers follow a number of key strategies, whether they're reading a magazine or a textbook. Firstly, they create a wide range of mental and visual images as they read, to feel involved with what they are reading. Then, they use their background and relevant prior knowledge before, during, and after reading to enhance their understanding of what they are reading. They also make and ask questions before, during, and after reading to clarify meaning, make predictions, and focus their attention on what's important. Good readers infer and determine the most important ideas or themes, and distinguish between these and unimportant information. Next, they track their thinking while reading to get the overall meaning. Finally, if they have trouble understanding specific words, phrases, or longer passages, they use a wide range of problem-solving strategies, including skipping ahead, rereading, asking questions, using a dictionary, and reading the passage aloud to fix up their understanding. Reading is fundamental to success in life. It's that simple. Reading opens the door to virtually all other learning. You have to be able to read to learn mathematics, science, history, engineering, mechanics, political science, not to mention to surf the web or figure out how to operate that new DVD player. Basically, you have to be able to read to succeed.
68.
How would you feel if a robot looked after your child? Worried? Anxious? What if that robot was as intelligent as yourself, if not more so, and was able to react to every problem and whim without ever tiring or wanting to scream. For those studying and working in artificial intelligence, AI, creating this kind of situation could so easily become a reality. AI is embedded in many educational applications, explains Janet Reed, a professor in child-computer interaction at the University of Central Lancashire, pointing to new gesture recognition and interpretation technologies. Brain-computer interfaces are detecting mood and emotion, and in the near future, robotic and virtual systems might be able to partially take on the care of children.
69.
AI is one of the most exciting fields of technological study, giving computers the ability to think, learn, and adapt when faced with a host of data. But it is not a technology of the future. It is all around us today, pervading our everyday lives and allowing us to take advantage of image and voice recognition software, intelligent web searching, and medical advances. The latter made possible thanks to robot scientists formulating hypotheses and interpreting data. Modern video games use AI to generate intelligent behavior in non-player characters. NASA's Mars rover was designed to make its own decisions, stopping and analyzing only the rocks it felt would be useful. And more is to come, with driverless cars and intelligent home systems on their way. As a result, many universities have been promoting AI courses and modules for both undergraduate and postgraduate students. Each of them requires a solid background in computing, maths, and physics, and explores knowledge representation, planning, and learning. Studying AI is perfect for students who can solve problems in abstract ways and devise new angles, says Dr. Richard Watson, senior lecturer in electronics and computer science at the University of Southampton. But AI is also about learning techniques of advanced computer science. So students should have a broad education in computer science before they tackle it. For that reason, very few undergraduate degrees will concentrate entirely on AI. Instead, it tends to be offered as modules within an overall computer science degree.
70. Neglect of the mind-body link by technological medicine is actually a brief aberration when viewed against the whole history of the healing art. In traditional tribal medicine and in Western practice from its beginning in the work of Hippocrates, the need to operate through the patient's mind has always been recognized. Until the 19th century, medical writers rarely failed to note the influence of grief, despair, or discouragement on the onset and outcome of illness, nor did they ignore the healing effects of faith, confidence, and peace of mind. Contentment used to be considered a prerequisite for health. The modern medicine man has gained so much power over certain diseases through drugs, however, that he has forgotten about the potential strength within the patient. One elderly physician friend recently told me of reading the diary of his uncle, also a doctor. In the early years, the diarist always recorded what happened to the individual or the community prior to an illness or epidemic. But as medicine became more technological, this part of the history grew less and less important to him, and finally was omitted altogether. Awareness of the mind's powers was lost as medicine cast out all soft data, the information that's not easily quantified or scientific.